Oh, Delia Ketchum. So good to me. No, don't go yet. 5 more minutes. No, don't go. Gotta get up and do these anime reviews. What do we have today? Sci-Fi Harry? Oh, hell no. Damn it, Bob. I just cleaned up in here. Have you ever seen an anime series where the synopsis really just screamed to you and you knew it was going to be something that you enjoy? For me, that was Sci-Fi Harry. But it sucked. Sci-Fi Harry is classified as a drama, horror, sci-fi series, which are 3 genres that I love, and its description sounded interesting. It's about this shy teenager who learns that he has these psychic abilities, and due to his inability to control them, he accidentally starts killing people around him. And I know you're probably thinking, but Bob, that sounds really awesome, and I agree, it does, but it suffers from a horrific execution. At its heart, Sci-Fi Harry would have made a good 6-episode long OVA, and I mean good, not great, but instead it's actually 20 episodes long. The pacing is so bad that it took me over a year to watch this series, and just the other day I started over from episode 1 and pushed through it all in a single day, and I literally had such a bad headache from that, but it had to be done. I suffered so you don't have to. While I was drifting through the middle of the series, I tried to look up information about the manga, and turns out it's only 2 volumes long. It was completed with only 2 volumes. How do they turn 2 volumes of content into 20 episodes of anime? And I read the first volume. It really only covered at least the first 5 episodes, so the second volume couldn't have covered everything else. There's got to be loads of filler in it, and that's why I looked it up, just to determine what was actually canon in the series, but unfortunately that second volume was never translated. What I can say is that they used every trick in the book to stretch this out, to reach that 20 episodes. During most of the conversations in the series, they take these awkward pauses that are just cringeworthy, where they sit there staring dumbfoundedly at the camera for an average of 3 or 4 seconds each, numerous times during each conversation, or most of the conversations, and then they will do things to stretch out the conversation even more, such as reiterating themselves by repeating the same things and also repeating the character's name. And this isn't even the bad dub, this is actually the sub that I was watching, and they were doing that. Tom, pass me the salt, Tom. I need the salt for my potatoes. Tom. You see, it's really annoying when they do that, and then they have these pan shots where they'll show the environment and nobody's talking, nothing's happening, and they'll just show the scenery to everything, which, you know, usually that's not that big of a deal, but it's being coupled with everything else that makes it more noticeable. And I know a lot of these are gonna sound like nitpicks to you, but given those are coupled with how over half the series is filled with irrelevant dialogue between tertiary characters that involve all of those flaws, it's really gonna get on your nerves. Sometimes it can take you a few episodes to really get into a series, because sometimes it gets better, and with Sci-Fi Harry, I liked the first 3 or 4 episodes, but then it hits this slow stride where the plot evolves at a snail's pace, and it's just so slow that it doesn't pick up again until around episode 15, and it's only 20 episodes long. And then when it finally starts to pick back up, it's still plagued by having these irrelevant characters that were in the middle of the series, and then when you finally get an explanation to some of the things that are going on, some of them have potential, while most of them just sound like they were pulled out of the writer's ass. Basically, Harry is this kid who I suspect might be mentally disabled. If not, he is really shy then, and if he is, then more points to them for that, because you rarely find an anime series out there where the lead character has some sort of disability. He discovers his latent psychic abilities, and he starts using that as his ticket to popularity because he's never been popular in his life. Unbeknownst to him, innocent people around him are being killed with their necks broken or their heads twisted right off their bodies the same way that he would do when he's practicing on the spoon. There were some detectives working on these murder cases, and they started putting two and two together when they just jumped to the conclusion of assuming that they were killed by psychic powers in a world that is comparably realistic where people just don't believe in psychic abilities. So because of Harry's unusual talents, this lands him in a spot on a TV show bending spoons in front of an audience where these detectives rush in to the TV studio trying to shut it down before he kills everybody because they believe his abilities can actually go through the TV and kill a lot of people on the outside. So as soon as they stop that conveniently, he accidentally kills everybody or nearly everybody in the audience. This scene where Harry accidentally kills almost the entire audience when he's trying to bend these spoons, it was supposed to be a form of mystery to the series because they act like you're not supposed to know who did it, but due to its poor writing, it's closer to dramatic irony if anything else. Because of these events, Harry is sought after both by police and also this mysterious organization that eventually kidnaps him. And then once the terrible pacing kicks in and your perspective shifts away from Harry to all of these other irrelevant characters, you can really see how every single character in the entire series is trying to take advantage of Harry for personal gain. And usually this would spark some sort of emotional response and cause me to care more about the character, but it didn't because I was honestly bored out of my fucking mind. And eventually we meet our first round character of the series, who unfortunately is a damn lowly, as if there wasn't already enough pet peeves of mine thrown at me with the series. There's also this topless scene with her, which brought the cringe factor of the series to over 9,000, and I just had to go there for the joke because it's true. The character of Chinori starts off as this really painfully dependent character who is desperate for the love of Harry, but then it turns out that she's this wolf in sheep's clothing, where she's also out to take advantage of Harry because of his innocence for her own personal gain. Around 14 to 15 episodes into the series, when the story starts to pick up, they really go balls to the wall with it and add in so many elements that it quickly becomes convoluted, adding multiple layers to the secret organization that's after Harry that are at war with each other, and then you have the police that are after him as well and trying to uncover what's going on here. You have different levels of the police that are kind of against each other too, and it's really convoluted, and I feel that most of it, 90% of it, is unnecessary. Oh, and then there's Harry's first love interest in the series, Catherine. She's completely useless, and she uses Harry to live out this lost social relationship that she wants to have with her brother, and she knows that he likes her, but she's using him anyway. For a story like this, I would expect something more along the lines of the military going after him and trying to use him as a weapon because of his psychic powers, or maybe scientists going after him to tie him up and dissect him just to see what makes him tick, but then they add in this element of immortality to him, where certain characters are trying to use his body to gain immortality, which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense because his psychic abilities are part of his mind. That has nothing to do with his body, and you can tell in the first episode when he's playing basketball that his body's not worth the shit, so I don't know why they're even after that, but his power is within his mind. That's what's with all the psychic abilities here. And then the writing can be downright laughable at times because later on in the series, when they get into gene manipulation and something along the lines of cloning, you have this doctor which is drilling into the skull of this girl, and as she's drilling in there and inspecting the brain, she sees something that surprises her, and then she asks one of the other doctors in the operating room, hey, did you check the blood? You're supposed to check the blood before you drill into the poor girl's skull. And then she said, are you sure we have the right person here? And then there's this part of the series where Harry meets someone who I thought was this alternate persona of his, or something that was within his mind because of his psychic abilities, because at that time I realized that nobody else could see this character, but there's this man called Mother. The man called Mother. I didn't know what to expect of that, but it really looks a lot like Harry, except for the eyes are different, but in a way it kind of looks androgynous in ways where it could be either male or female, and I think just because the character was called Mother, I thought that it could be a woman, but then the bulge in the nude scene confirmed that it's actually a guy, but For some reason, every character here has a nude scene where they just stand there naked and talk to each other. And then when the story started to get a bit better near the end and they started to give you all these big reveals, none of them really made sense, and it honestly felt like they were running out of time and they just rushed it, which sounds really counterproductive because they had all of this time in the middle of the series when nothing was really happening, when you had all of these irrelevant characters talking to each other. Did they do no storyboards and map all this out? Moving on to the animation, this was produced by a studio called PPP, and I've never heard of them before until now, until I wanted to find out which sorry sacks were responsible for creating this atrocity, and then I find out that they also produced JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Boy, and Katsuhiro Otomo's Rojin Z, and those aren't the most beautiful anime out there, but it's painfully obvious that they kind of just gave up when they were making Sci-Fi Harry. And what really racks my brain with this is you can tell that this had such a low budget that you could probably go out to dinner with your friends and pay less than the budget of Sci-Fi Harry, but they still wanted to make this into 20 episodes when they could have just made it a 6-episode OVA and had somewhat of a comprehensible story. With the first 1 or 2 episodes and a few of the screenshots that you can find of this online, the art style actually looks pretty good, but from there it drops considerably, and you will see a good looking character every now and then, but they are few and far between. And then the animations are on a whole other level of bad, where only one character in the entire series has any sort of facial animations. All of the other characters, the only times that you see their face move are when they open their mouth or their eyes get wide, and aside from that you might get little pink blush marks on their cheeks, but that's really it. There's only one character in the series that has any sort of emotion, and most of these characters just stare dumbfoundedly at the screen. There are so many blank, emotionless gazes here that I feel like I'm watching 20 episodes of reaction footage of deer getting caught by headlights. The collision detection of the cells were so poor that when characters would get next to each other, it really looked like 2 pieces of paper stacked on top of each other. And then sometimes the faces or the bodies of characters would get distorted when they're trying to move or when they're just standing still. And then the backgrounds themselves looked so poor that it looked like something you would find in a 90s visual novel. The only redeeming qualities that I can say about the animation is that the opening was good, sometimes the characters look pretty good, and then the animation of some of the psychic damage that you find here is good when they animate it, but that's only when they animate it. Most of the time, you only see this puff of smoke and then a cut to the reaction, to the damage that everything is left. You don't actually see a lot of it in the progress. This anime came out in 2001, and while it sports more modern character designs, the animation takes you far back to the low-budget anime series of the 80s. 2001 wasn't even that long ago. Just for the sake of reference, some of the other anime series that you may have heard of that came out in 2001 or around that time were Scryed, Fruits Basket, and Gundam 8th MS Team. Moving on to the audio here, the soundtrack was bland and forgettable. There was only 2 songs out of it that I actually liked. They were the opening and the closing, and I thought they were pretty good. As far as the voice acting goes, I wish this had an English dub, because I don't even care. Give me that VHS early 90s Kung Fu dub. I'd watch that over the sub here, over the original Japanese audio, simply because it's easier to sit through than this was, having to pay attention to all of the subs with such a boring story. As far as the Japanese voice acting goes, I have no complaints there. Moving on to my overall score of Sci-Fi Harry, I give this a 4 out of 10. This is the lowest score that I've given anything yet. Yes, the animation is bad, and I have overlooked worse animation than this before, but coupled with a terrible pacing and just the boring story that we have, I really think that that added in taking away from the experience. And what made me mad with Sci-Fi Harry was that the base elements of the story had potential. This could have became something, but because of its poor writing, its poor pacing, its bad animation, it all just became this bad package that really makes you not want to watch it, and it's really not worth it. You have to ask yourself if it's really worth it to watch a series that has so little going for it, where the first few episodes are okay, and then you have to watch 10 episodes of boring conversation go on just to get 4 or 5 episodes that are also just okay. Personally, I don't think it's worth it. And the only reason I'm even reviewing Sci-Fi Harry is because everywhere I look, all of the reviews I find of Sci-Fi Harry either give it a 7 or an 8, and some people and certain sites give this a 9, which I think is really overrating the series, and the only negative reviews that I ever found of Sci-Fi Harry were for people who weren't actually reviewing it. They were just saying they didn't like the series because the main character was wimpy, and you really can't base it off all on that. There are so many other elements at play here. And also, I'm reviewing this because I had a good friend of mine recommend me the series, and it had really become this this running joke with us. Whenever we talk about the worst series of all time, we just bring up Sci-Fi Harry, but I don't hold that against her. She's recommended me plenty of great other anime before. But anyways, let me know in the comment section below if you've seen Sci-Fi Harry. Do you agree with me or you disagree with me? For some reason, people disagree. If you disagree and you think this is a good anime, please explain why, because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts in a way that I can actually interact with people. If you have different opinions, I'm curious to hear about that. So let me know about that in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. Thanks for your likes and comments and your support with that. I'll see you next time.